Welcome back to AI Paper Podcasts. Today we're really diving into a fascinating paper. It reveals a pretty surprising, maybe even a bit alarming, new attack surface for large language models.
Yeah, it's definitely a shift in perspective.
So forget standard prompt hacking for a minute. This research introduces something called Constrained Decoding Attack, or CDA. It basically weaponizes the structured output features we use in LLM APIs. Things like JSON schemas, grammars.
Right, the very tools we use for control and integration.
Exactly. And it uses these control plane constraints to embed malicious intent, while the actual input prompt, the data plane, looks totally innocent.
And the kicker is, they show it can successfully jailbreak even top models, like GPT-4o and Gemini 2.0 Flash, often with just one query.
Yeah, achieving alarmingly high success rates. It really exposes a blind spot in how we're currently thinking about LLM security.
Absolutely. So for you, our technically savvy listeners, researchers, engineers staying ahead means understanding these kinds of nuances.
Today, we're unpacking this paper, Output Constraints as Attack Surface, Exploiting Structured Generation to Bypass LLM Safety Mechanisms.
It's critical stuff.
Yeah.
As LLMs get more integrated, knowing the weaknesses is key. This paper signals a real potential shift in the threat landscape. We're moving beyond just looking at the input.
Totally. You've all seen how useful structured output APIs are, right? Making LLMs talk to other software smoothly using JSON schemas and the like. But this paper makes a really strong case that this exact functionality, this convenience, introduces a major vulnerability. One we maybe haven't paid enough attention to.
Yeah, the argument is compelling. It focuses on the control plane, how the LLM generates output, the grammar rules we impose. Most security work has been on the input prompt, the data plane.
And they're saying we might have missed a pretty big backdoor there. So we'll be dissecting this new attack class, CDAs, and specifically a proof of concept they call the chain Enum Attack.
Our mission today is really to give you a solid grasp of this threat, what it means, and what we might be able to do about it.
Okay, so let's set the scene a bit. Traditional jailbreak attacks. The paper gives a good overview, mentions Figure 1 and Table 1 for reference.
Right, the usual suspects, handcrafted prompts, the do anything now or IJP stuff. Then there's the optimization-based methods like GCG, SAA.
And the template-based ones, master key, LLM fuzzer, autodan, pair, tap, struct transform, which are kind of clever, using LLMs to make better jailbreaks.
Plus, linguistics-based attacks like DRATAC, playing with language. And encoding attacks, Zulu, Base64 trying to sneak harmful stuff past filters.
Yeah, lots of different angles.
But the key point the people makes is all of those primarily hit the input prompt, the data plane.
Right.
Now we're seeing these output-based attacks emerge. The paper flags, NDEC, APT, and their own contributions, Enum Attack and Chain Attack. It's a different way of thinking.
So instead of just tricking the LLM with the input, the idea is to mess with the process of generating the output, which brings us to constrained decoding. Figure 2 illustrates it. Can you walk us through that?
Sure. So constrained decoding lets us guide the LLM's generation using grammar rules. Think of it like giving the LLM a strict blueprint for the structure of its output.
Like a template it has to follow.
Pretty much. The paper uses a compiler analogy, lexer and parser. The tokenizer acts like a lexer, breaking text into tokens. The grammar rule then acts like a parser, creating a per-token mask.
A mask.
Yeah, basically a filter. It tells the model which tokens are okay to use next, based on the grammar. Figure 3 shows this for JSON grammar. It helps visualize how it works.
So the mask says, use this token, not that one, based on the grammar rules you set up.
Exactly. Tokens that would break the grammar get assigned a super low probability, essentially impossible to pick. This forces the output to stick to the syntax, whether it's JSON, a regex, or some custom EBNF grammar.
And this isn't just theoretical, right? The paper mentions outlines, syncode, synchromesh, Xgrammar. Plus, OpenAI and Gemini have their own versions for things like guided choice, guided regex, guided JSON.
Oh yeah, definitely. It's out there, being used. These techniques are super useful for making LLMs play nice with other software where you need predictable, structured output.
Okay, so we've got these powerful tools for structure. What made the researchers suspect a security risk here? What was the motivation?
Well, it started with their initial tests on GPT-4o, that's in Figure 4. They threw standard jailbreak prompts from AdBench at it and got almost nothing, a really low attack success rate, like 1.1%, which suggests, the safety training on these models is pretty decent against traditional attacks.
Makes sense. They put a lot of effort into that. The paper notes the refusals were often quick, deterministic, made them think maybe external guardrails were stepping in early.
Right. So if the input is heavily guarded, maybe the vulnerability lies in controlling the output.
The back door.
Exactly. That robust input defense pushed them to look at the output side, specifically these structured output features. Figure 5 shows examples. If you can't trick the input, maybe you can force the output format to reveal the bad stuff.
Okay, I see the logic. So let's get to the main event. Constrained Decoding Attacks, CDAs. How are they different? Figure 6 seems key here.
Right. Like we said, traditional attacks are data plane manipulating the prompt. CDAs target the control plane, the decoding stage itself, using those grammar rules.
Ah, okay.
The malicious part isn't in the user's prompt, it's hidden inside the schema or grammar that dictates the output structure.
So the prompt could be totally bland, like answer this question.
Yeah.
But the instructions on how to format the answer contain the attack.
Precisely. The threat model assumes an attacker with API access who can specify these grammar rules, often via something like a response format parameter, which is, pretty standard these days.
Okay, and the first concrete example is the Enum Attack. How does that one work? Figure 8 has some example code.
The Enum Attack is surprisingly simple, but really effective. It exploits the enum feature in JSON schema.
Remind me what Enum does again.
It just lets you restrict a field's value to a specific list of predefined strings. So instead of letting the LLM generate freely, you give it a very short drop-down menu of options.
Gotcha, like multiple choice, but forced.
Exactly. So the attack uses a harmless prompt, like answer a question. But the JSON schema provided is malicious. In the enum list for a field, the attacker puts the harmful question, an affirmative prefix like, sure, here's how, and then placeholders for the harmful steps.
Whoa, okay, that's sneaky. The prompt looks fine, but the output structure forces the harmful content out.
Right, and because the model has to pick one of those enum strings, it's forced to start its response with, sure, here's how, and the harmful question.
And since LLMs are next token predictors.
Once it started down that path with that harmful premise and the affirmative prefix, it's very likely to just continue generating the rest of the harmful answer. It bypasses prompt auditing and internal safety alignment.
Wow, that feels like a fundamental loophole.
And the results they got on GPT models? Gemini. Yeah. Pretty shocking, right? Figure 9 shows an example on GPT-4o. Yeah, absolutely staggering. They reported basically 100% attack success rate ASR on GPT-4o using adv-bench prompts, with just one query.
100%.
100%. And they use this metric, strong reject score, equation 7, defines it to measure how harmful the output actually was. GPT-4o hit 95.6% strong reject, meaning it wasn't just jailbroken, it produced specific, detailed, harmful content.
So even a state-of-the-art model, heavily safety trained, completely bypassed by this relatively simple trick. That's serious.
It really is. And it gets potentially worse. They then introduced a more advanced version, the Chain Enum Attack, designed to get past even more robustly aligned models.
Chain Enum Attack. Okay, building on the first one, how does that work? And what's this shallow alignment idea it exploits? Figure 10 looks important here with the token distribution.
Right. So Chain Enum Attack is multi-stage. It banks on the idea that some models might have strong safety, but it's often shallow, meaning it's heavily focused on the first few tokens of the output.
Like the model's really careful about how it starts, but maybe lets its guard down a bit as it keeps talking.
Kind of, yeah. The vigilance might decrease. So the attack has 3 stages. 1, use a weakly aligned model. 1, easy to crack with a standard Enum attack to generate harmful prefixes.
Okay.
2, feed those harmful prefixes into your target, the more strongly aligned model. But, and this is key, use grammar constraints to force the stronger model to generate those exact same harmful prefixes as its first few tokens.
Ah, you're forcing his hand at the start.
Exactly. Stage 3. Because the strong model was forced to start with that compromised sequence, it kind of inherits the token distribution that led to it. It makes it much more likely to just continue generating the harmful stuff to complete the response.
So you use a lanky faucet to start flooding a more secure room, essentially, by controlling the initial flow. That token distribution ablation in Figure 10 shows this, right? How the probability shifts towards harmful words after those forced tokens.
Precisely. And equation 8 quantifies, it shows a dramatic jump in the probability of harmful completions after just a few forced starting tokens. It really highlights how current alignment might stop bad stuff starting from scratch, but struggles if the beginning is manipulated by these constraints.
Beyond Enum and Chain Enum, did they mention other ways this could be exploited? Other potential CDAs?
Yeah, they briefly touched on a few possibilities, like using guided grammar to do something similar to the Enum Attack, which messes with output logics directly in white box cases, or combining guided regex with an evaluator model, maybe like the APT attack, to refine outputs. And maybe most concerning, they suggest combining existing prompt jailbreaks, template-based linguistic space, with Enum Attack to make them even stronger.
The possibilities seem pretty wide open, especially with the flexibility of EBNF grammars. You could maybe make a grammar look harmless, but subtly push the model towards bad output.
That's exactly the worry. It really hammers home that this control plane, the output constraints, is a serious attack surface we need to defend.
Okay, let's talk evaluation. How do they test all this? What models, what data?
They were pretty thorough. Use a bunch of data sets. AdvBench, HarmBench, Jailbreak Bench, Sorry Bench, Strong Reject, covering different harmful scenarios.
Okay.
And they tested against proprietary models, GPT-4o, GPT-4 Mini, Gemini 2.0 Flash, plus a good range of recent open-weight ones. Phi 3.5 Marie, Mistral Nemo, Quen 2.532b, Llama 3.18b, Gemma 2.9b.
So a pretty broad slice of the current LLM landscape, both closed and open models.
Yeah.
And they used ASR, attack success, plus that strong reject score for harmfulness.
Yeah.
Figure 11 showed that improved strong reject evaluation, using constraints even on the judge model.
Yeah, that was a neat methodological point. They found the original strong reject judge sometimes refused to evaluate really harmful content. So they used guided grammar on the judge itself to force it to give a score, making the harmfulness evaluation more reliable.
Clever. Okay, so what were the main findings for Enum Attack on the open weight models? Table 3 had those results.
Largely mirrored the proprietary findings. Near 100% ASR, very high strong reject scores on almost all of them.
Oh.
Yeah, the one slight outlier was Phi 3.5 MOE. It still had high ASR, but its strong reject score was a bit lower, around 77%. Might suggest it has slightly better alignment against this specific attack.
Interesting. And then Table 4 looked at proprietary models and the best open one across all the benchmarks.
Right. And the contrast was stark. Baseline direct prompting attacks. Very low ASRs, confirming current defenses work okay against traditional methods.
But Enum Attack
Blew right past them. At least 95% ASR on most models across all 5 benchmarks with just one query. Even Gemini 2.0 Flash, which did best defensively, still got hit hard, over 89% ASR on 4 benchmarks, 81% on strong reject, and the strong reject scores were high everywhere, confirming real harmful content.
And the chain Enum Attack on Phi 3.5 MOE using GPT-4 or prefixes.
Yeah, that boosted both ASR and strong reject even higher for Phi 3.5, really showed how you could leverage one model's weakness against another.
Demonstrates that cross-model vulnerability idea.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so given these results, what are the big takeaways for LLM safety? And what can we actually do about this? What defenses do they suggest?
Well, the paper points out 2 main findings. Finding 1. There's a huge blind spot we're generally not auditing these decoding constraints, which is bad because Enum Attack shows you can hide all the malice there by passing prompt checks.
Makes sense. We look at the input, maybe the output, but not the rules connecting them.
Exactly. And finding 2 output auditing, while important, isn't foolproof because of attacks like their benign Enum Attack, that's figure 13. This attack can make seemingly harmless output still convey harmful info using constraints. It creates a deadlock hard to tell harmful from benign.
Yeah, that benign Enum Attack sounds really tricky. Could cause lots of false alarms or let bad stuff slip through. So what's the fix?
They propose a few mitigation strategies. First, safety-preserving grammar constraints. Basically have a white list of critical safety tokens like, I'm sorry, I can't.
Yeah.
That user grammars cannot override or mask. The model keeps its ability to refuse.
Okay, like reserving certain refusal phrases. Seems logical, though maybe tricky to implement without breaking useful constraint patterns.
Could be. Second, context-aware token attribution. This means tracking where each token came from. Was it forced by a user constraint or generated freely by the model? This could help spot manipulation attempts.
Like adding provenance tracking to the generation process. More complex, maybe, but sounds potentially robust.
Yeah. And third, integrated safety signaling. This involves designing the LLM itself with special internal signal tokens like sexual or political that the model could generate internally to flag risky contexts, even within constrained decoding.
Interesting. Building safety awareness deeper into the model's own process. These all sound like good research directions.
Definitely. And the authors mentioned the ethical side too. Their goal is to get this info out to the security community so we can build defenses. They disclosed it to the model providers, aiming for more comprehensive safety overall.
Okay, let's wrap this up. What does this all mean for you, our audience? This deep dive into CDAs really opens up a new front in LLM security. It's a wake-up call, honestly.
Yeah, the fact that output constraints can bypass safety in top models so easily shows how fast this field is moving.
And for those of you actually building with LLM APIs, here's the unsettling part. The very features that give you power and control, guided JSON, grammars, can be turned against you.
The simplicity and high success of Enum Attack, especially on models like GPT-4o, should really make us pause and rethink our security posture.
So the big message is, we can't just focus on input filtering and output checking anymore. We have to look at the decoding process itself, the constraints being applied.
Right, those defenses, safety-preserving grammars, token attribution, safety signaling point the way forward. We need a more proactive approach.
Key takeaways then.
Yeah.
LLM security is an arms race. Structured output is powerful but risky, and we need a holistic safety view input, decoding, output, the whole pipeline.
Absolutely. For you listeners wanting more detail, definitely check out the paper. It's got all the experimental specifics. Think about how this might affect your own work.
And here's a final thought to chew on. As we rely more and more on LLMs, how do we stop the very mechanisms we build for control and reliability from becoming our biggest vulnerabilities?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? It's going to shape AI safety research for a long time to come, and it's something everyone in this field needs to be thinking about.